We'd like to start with, so how is the pandemic treating you and your family right now?
Okay, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for having me on the program. In fact, I'm quite excited to be on this program's first recording because it's something which I know has a far bigger association for me since you all are students. I mean, at least I've taught one of you, so that was the thing for me to look forward to. Yeah, and as far as the pandemic is concerned, I think everybody's making peace with it. People are just trying to figure out a way to move on with their lives, with their work, and things are, I think, getting just better. So the same
Hopefully.
for the legal fraternity as well.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. So I think I'll start with a very simple question is that you are in a very unique position in a way that you practice as well as you are an adjunct faculty at a very esteemed college. So I think my simple question would to you would be why teaching beside practicing? Is it something that is always interested you or is it something that kind of happened due to circumstances?
Actually, I never thought I'd be teaching, if you asked me earlier. In fact, it was only in 2015 when I met some of my batchmates in a reunion and I came to meet a person who was already teaching at Jindal, uh, Professor Brajesh Ranjan. So he was a faculty member at OP Jindal Global University, and he asked me to basically help out with some guest lectures as a visiting faculty, as a guest lecturer. So I started taking up some classes for him. He also started giving my inputs regarding the assignments, some course structure. So that kind of got me a little closer to academia and the interest in academics. I started enjoying that experience because I was not sure how it will be teaching a classroom of students, and it was not something I was familiar with. But while doing that, I also got an opportunity to teach some of the police officers at the Delhi Police Academy. So it really helped, and I really enjoyed teaching thereafter. It's still something that I'm hoping to improve and get better at. But but I think the biggest draw for a litigator is that a lot of people who are practicing enjoy the experience of going to courts, and they go there and they basically like the fact that there's a judge who's asking questions and they want to know how prepared you are. They want to be assisted by you, and that interaction that takes place in the courtroom between the lawyers and the presiding officer, the judicial officer, that is something which gives a different level of satisfaction to lawyers when they come out of court, irrespective of the result that they would have arrived at. So I think there is a similar stimulus in a classroom environment when you're teaching students, and I found that at least in Jindal. I have taught in other universities also as a guest lecturer, but I found that the students are a lot more interactive. They want to ask you a question on a given day. Of course, there will be some off days when students are tired with continuous classes and repeated assignment submissions, etc. But on most days, you will find that the students come prepared. They will ask you those questions. The discussion will be not limited to the course manual and the topics that are given there. It will go beyond that, and that's the thing. In fact, I have seen that in my limited experience while teaching, that when I'm interacting with the students, I've discovered the difference between the students looking at the same law that we look at as a practitioner,
Hmm.
because we are beaten in the system, and you are forced to think in a certain way, but the students are still open to looking at the interpretation
Yeah.
in a light where they are not bound by limitations, and that's the reason why
Right.
a student can come up with a fantastic idea, and I've seen that. I mean, while my interaction has happened with in the university, I've seen those students go ahead and write research papers or get something published on what they have thought about, and had a preliminary discussion with me. So it just shows that it's fantastic to be in that environment as a practitioner for me, to have that interaction with the students, and there's a lot for me to gain
Hmm.
as well. So I bring that experience back into my practice. It allows me to have that have those fresh ideas, and it's an experience which actually allows me to balance both my practice as well as teaching.
Right. So coming back to say, since we are talking about college so much, how was your experience with college? How was your college life?
Well, it was quite enjoyable, I must say. I actually went to college and discovered that there are so many things to be done there in terms of co-curriculars, extracurriculars, and frankly, there was a lot of opportunities for me, and I didn't want to miss out on anything. So I actually did a lot of stuff, not necessarily related to only law. So I actually, in my first year, joined. There was an organization, I don't know if it still exists, called ISEC. So I
Yeah.
joined the ISEC, yeah, and
Hmm.
I found that quite unique because I'd been part of other similar organizations in school, like Leadership Training Service and Christian Life Community, etc. But this was something very different. I mean, ISEC was quite dynamic. In fact, it's a contemporary organization which had a different way of working, and it was a different experience. I joined my the Moot Court Society in my college. I want to participate in moot courts and at least represent the college once a year in different moot court competitions for the college. So I did that. I was able to go for a national level moot court competition every year, having qualified at the novice elimination level in the college. That was the intra college event,
Hmm.
and I also enjoyed my experience interning. So it was quite nice, and I did about 15 internships, but that was also because I didn't know how much was enough. I don't think 15 internships in 5 years is a necessity. Looking back, if I could do things differently, I would have probably done a little lesser internships and maybe use that time to do a little more of writing and maybe doing a little more moots if need be. It's not like the grades suffered, but I just felt that for me, I always was running short of time in college because there was so much to do and so little time. I think I can see that with students now at the university who are always pressed for time and they have to submit assignments, and I find that they are in a similar situation because sometimes you don't know in college how much is enough, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of pressure also on students because they're looking at placements, they're looking at going abroad for higher education, and they always are looking to improve their CV. At least that's something that I wanted to do when I was in college. And apart from academics, I mean, what are the other things you can do to improve that? Is
Yeah.
something that is a constant, worry for the students in terms of what all can they do, what complements their interests. So sometimes students may just try out something which they may not necessarily pursue after 5 years. I know I did out of the in my 5 years, out of the 15 internships, not every internship was with a criminal lawyer or in litigation. A lot of
Hmm.
my internships were actually corporate internships because I was undecided. I mean, I knew somewhere in the back of my head that I wanted to do litigation, but I obviously wasn't really sure how to go about it, and that's the reason why there was this worry that made me do corporate internships just to keep my to secure a place just in case I have to fall back on a corporate job. I mean, that was the mindset at that time. So being part of a non-residential college, I think, has its drawbacks, and that is something that I faced. I mean, as students, you all are obviously in a much different position. Being in a residential, campus, you all can obviously
Yeah.
say how beneficial it is. But definitely, I think that constant interaction between your batchmates and amongst senior, batches gives you a fair idea as to what is useful for a professional course like law. I mean, you need that kind of guidance.
Yeah. So listening to you, it seems that you had it all figured out in your college life because, like right now, if you ask us, to be honest, we are very confused, right? We don't really know which field we'll well into eventually. So this is something that I wanted to ask: was law something that you always wanted to do, or was it like circumstances that made you choose law over the other field or something?
No, I wasn't. decided about doing law from the beginning. I think I only thought about it when my parents proposed it as an option in when I was in my 12th standard. I obviously had other plans. I was a sportsman. I used to play hockey. I
Oh,
played, I've represented Bengal at the district level and the state level. So I actually enjoyed, my life as a sportsman. I used to also be associated with the newspaper at that time when I was in school. I used to report, uh, events, take pictures for the newspaper. This was the Herald, and I really thought that I could take that up by doing a mass communication course, and
mm-hmm.
doing my graduation in mass communication. But that was not something which obviously my parents were happy about, and they asked me what is my future plan if I ended up doing that course, and I obviously wasn't really aware about my options then. So I told them that I eventually want to open up a studio. I want to have a photography studio, and I don't know. I mean, that was the lack of information, which didn't seem very convincing for my parents to let me pursue that. So that's when they proposed that since I was a student of commerce background, they said that why don't you look at also, writing these entrance exams, maybe
Mm-hmm.
consider doing law. So I spoke to a few seniors of mine from school, and they happened to, recommend that it's an interesting course, and my parents also agreed that I could just try it out for a few months, and if I didn't like it, I could always return. But that never happened. So once I actually joined law college, I realized that this is a field which I really found very interesting. I mean, the subjects were, uh, by itself, they generated a lot of curiosity. And criminal law was something I really liked from the beginning. I never really planned to be a criminal lawyer. I just wanted to litigate. This is something I knew from day one in law college, that I wanted to litigate. It's just that I didn't know how, you know, easy or difficult it would be, or how I could go about it. And like you said about confusion, I mean, I have been undecided. Once I was confused, but I was undecided till my final year, in fact. And I had got some pre-placement offers from law firms where I'd interned,
Mm-hmm.
corporate law firms. I told them honestly that actually, if I wanted to take this job up, I really would, but I'm not really interested in corporate work, and I wanted to basically do litigation, and that's one of the things that I was forthright about, and they were actually quite encouraging. And I wasn't really sure because I didn't have lawyers coming into college. I don't know if that phenomena has changed now.
Mm-hmm.
Lawyers wouldn't come into college for placements,
Mm-hmm.
and it was difficult to be sure that you have a job at the end of your fifth year, that you're going to be going and joining a particular chamber unless you've interned over there and the lawyer offers you a job. It is not an easy option, just like how it would be for certain law firms. Like either they come in on day zero and they pick up students, or you apply to them and you'd have a formal interview process. It doesn't necessarily work like that with law chambers. It's still a conservative approach where they would prefer to hire a student if they have interned in that particular chamber, so they're familiar
Mm-hmm.
with your work.
Okay.
And again, there are not too many ratings and lists floating around where you'd know these are the lawyers who are good in a particular field. At least there's a lot more information now than it was way back when I graduated in 2007. So it was a little difficult to be sure about who are the good lawyers. I also interned in different cities. I mean, just to have that kind of exposure, I've interned in Calcutta, in uh, Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, and Pune. So I did those internships just to also see the kind of quality of life in those cities. I wanted to see how it would be if I took up a job over there and started working in those cities. But I think that's the same situation with any student. I mean, in college, it's not just a question of joining a good chamber. Uh, you'll also have to see how are you going to balance your lifestyle, your life post work, whether you're going to be staying, your logistics, whether you'll be getting paid and how much are you going to get paid, how are you going to manage. So those are things which I think are concerns for a lot of people, other than the fact that they would definitely want to work in a good chamber and get that exposure to good quality work.
Yeah. So like we talked to you about the fact that a lot of people, like a lot of students are actually confused because once your law school ends, you have this question whether you want to delve into the field of corporate law or whether you want to be a litigator. So what I feel, this is my perception, what I feel is that, people are not very open to the idea of becoming litigators because they feel that it takes a lot of time to essentially establish yourself first. So, and that's why they venture into the field of corporate law, because as soon as you get into a corporate world, the pay is pretty good as compared to let's say if you start fresh with being a litigator. So how would compare that, and what would you advise being a litigator who's been litigating for like 13 years now? So what would your advice be to us?
Well, I mean, I'm not the first person saying this. I mean, this is a fact which a lot of litigators know, students know who are about to join the profession because they would have been told by other people, they would have seen it during the internships. Litigation is a difficult profession, and not because the difficulty is related to law. The difficulties are not attached to the subject of your work. It's other factors which really make you think over the course of your tenure as a litigator whether you have made the right decision and you want to pursue this or you want to continue, being in the profession as a litigator. A lot of people. That's why I mean there are so many law colleges in the country, and there are so many people who come into the profession as a litigator. But how many of them really sustain and carry on? A lot of them actually drop out. I mean, they may join a company as an in-house, or they may join a law firm, or they may actually leave law and do something totally different altogether. Um, but the question is that they need to be sure that this is something that they really want to do. I mean, you really need to have that kind of willpower and dedication to be uh, you know sure that you want to continue in this profession. If you're not, then the problems will persist, and they will make it they will present an option for you to then leave this and pursue something else. It will only get better with time, but then those as you progress in the profession, you realize that the nature of problem also changes. Your problems of the first year is the same as in law college. I mean, your problems as a first year student are no longer problems as a final year student, but the
Hmm.
problems are different and they're much more serious if it actually is a problem.
Yeah.
So it's the same for litigation. I mean, you'll find that the initial problems that you may have in the profession, they disappear over a period of time. But what actually happens is that if you end up having a problem as a older counsel, then those are having a far bigger effect than the problems that you would have faced as a young lawyer, because they would be related to a certain case that you're handling because it's sensitive in nature. They'd be related to the fact that you are a lawyer of a certain experience, but you will not want to do certain things which you would have done earlier as a younger lawyer. You would not want to. I mean, if as a younger lawyer you made a mistake, you don't want to end up making those mistakes as an older lawyer, because you don't want to be, you know, pointed. You don't want those things to be pointed out in court, and it look really embarrassing. You're not a young counsel, so you have to be very careful about how you conduct yourself in court. And the profession is like that for everybody. As you progress, the mistakes that you make will get highlighted far more than it would have gotten highlighted when you were a younger lawyer. But the problems will persist. You need to then just understand that is this something that you really want to do? Is it worth all your time, effort, the sacrifices that you make? Because obviously, I'm pretty sure that every profession is tough, but litigation per se, because it's not very organized in terms of there not being any time that you can say that I will do a 9 to 5 routine, or I will do a 9 to 9 routine. You might actually end up giving in a lot more time, your own personal time, into the profession, because it will demand that. If you're working in a busy chamber, if you're working with a busy lawyer, then you might end up working on weekends. You might end up working on 7 days a week. sometimes even during vacations, there might be enough matters to keep you there. It's not like you'll not have any break. You will probably get a break, but it will not be maybe at the time when other people are taking a break. I mean, if you're ending up working during the vacation, then you might end up taking a break just before the courts reopen or something, or sometime later. But uh, your timings will not match the timings of your friends and family members.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things which will actually start bothering you, and then you start thinking about the amount of money that you're making. I mean, if you're getting paid by the senior, then I mean, how much of that is getting used up in your day-to-day expenses, and what is it that you're ending up saving? Are you able to spend some of that on the stuff that you want to? Maybe you want to take a holiday. Maybe you want to buy some things for yourself. Are you able to afford those things? Are you able to afford that kind of a lifestyle being in litigation? So, in terms of what you're giving to the profession and what it gives you back as a monetary value, and you compare the two, then sometimes it might be a little unsatisfactory for you to say that, I'm really happy in this profession. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, if you are willing to tide over that period and maybe spend a little more time, then you might find that actually the problems of a struggling lawyer of the initial days are no longer a concern, because you're probably monetary problems are no longer there, but it's a question of having sustained work, having high quality work, um, maintaining a clean record, having a good reputation, not succumbing to any temptation of you know doing something unethical, or doing something in your professional work where you are embarrassed about it, or you can be faulted for that. So those are the perils of the profession as you get older and you spend more time in the profession.
So now the last question for this segment would be like whenever you hear the word nep. Oh, so firstly, I'll ask you a question, and then I'll ask you the question, the big question, basically. So, are you a first gen litigator, first gen lawyer from your family?
Yes, I'm the first lawyer from my family, and
Okay.
I have a sister, my younger sister, who's also in the profession, but
Okay.
she joined after me.
Yeah.
My
So
wife is
essentially, you were
also
the
a lawyer.
first. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So my question is, whenever you hear the word nepotism, you tend to relate it to Bollywood. But what we and what the perception we have as well is that is something that helps you in the field of law as well. So, for example, if my father or if my mom is a lawyer, who's a practicing lawyer, so it's comparatively easier for me to get into that field as a litigator, right? But how would a person who is a first gen, such as yourself, like how would you establish yourself, because you're essentially a very small fish in a huge pond and that pond is filled with big fishes? So how did you establish yourself? So we'd really like to know that.
I think I used to think differently when I was in college. I used to actually think that this whole nepotism debate makes it very unfair for first generation lawyers, and it's also easier for maybe lawyers who have family in the profession. But my thinking has changed as I've spent time in the profession. I think this exists in every profession. It's not limited to law or Bollywood, but it's just the thing that I can speak for myself. I think you need to find the right kind of seniors to work with, the right kind of officers to join, and it's purely a question of putting your head down and working. I mean, if you're doing that work, you will get noticed for the work that you do, and if you're in a good chamber, if you're in a good office, you're with a good senior, you will get the right opportunities. If you've made a choice of a wrong office, or a, a lawyer who you don't want to work with, then maybe you should change, because you will be unhappy. And no lawyer is good or bad. It's just that two people don't click, and maybe you don't want to work in that place. That person may not also want to have you in the chamber. So it's better than to move on and find the right fit, like I mean, the right kind of office that you want to work in. Once you are there and you're just working uh, hard, you will get the opportunities as time goes by. When you get those opportunities, you've got to make the most of it, and each opportunity will present further opportunities for you as the time as things progress. But yes, where I think that if you have people in the profession, you might end up getting those opportunities far easier, or far too many, uh, than people who are not from the profession, like, I mean,
Mhm.
who are first generation lawyers. That is the only difference. I think they will still even those lawyers who have families in the in the profession, they still have to work equally hard. They still have to deliver the goods, and they still have to do all those things that's expected from a first generation lawyer. Um, and if you are not good at your work, irrespective whether you're a first generation lawyer, you're a person who has family in the profession, you are not going to obviously do well as you would expect yourself to. It's not a question that you're not going to be able to survive in the profession. You will get work. You will get enough work to run your office and run a house, but there's a certain quality of work that you may want to do after a point of time. So if you are interested in doing that kind of work, if you're interested in doing that high quality work, if you want to maintain a certain standard, then you have to work hard, and it doesn't really matter who's your I mean, what, whether you're a first generation lawyer, or you're from a family of lawyers, etc. So